Albert Camus, in his famous essay The Myth of Sisyphus, used this myth to illustrate his philosophy of the absurd and urged us in the closing lines to imagine Sisyphus happy, paradoxically finding meaning in his meaningless labor. Greek mythology is full of punished mortals like Sisyphus, mortals who angered the gods and had to pay for it throughout eternity. Prometheus was not a human mortal but a titan. In the Greek imagination, he existed in a time before humans, and before the reign of the Olympian gods. As a descendant of the primordial deities Uranus and Gaia, personifications of heaven and earth, the Titans ruled the world before being violently overthrown by the Olympian gods under the leadership of the god of thunder. You've probably heard how Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans. But that's not the whole story. Plato, in his dialogue Protagoras, recounts what happened before the famous episode of the theft of fire. In Plato's account, after the gods created animals and humans from clay, Prometheus and Epimetheus were given the task of assigning qualities to this newly created life. Epimetheus gave squids their tentacles, eagles their wings, lions their ferocious fangs. But in his haste and clumsiness, he forgot to give humans their share, and nothing was left when he finished. To correct this mistake, Prometheus snuck into Hephaestus's workshop, and with Athena's help, stole fire and knowledge and gave it to humanity. Now humans could keep warm, build shelters, forge tools, and ensure their survival through the use of technology. Plato relates that Prometheus was punished for this transgression, but does not detail the exact nature of the punishment. In many versions of the myth, Prometheus was also the one who created humans in the first place, shaping them from clay in the image of the gods. When the ruler of Olympus learned of the theft, he punished Prometheus by chaining him to a rock on a mountain, where each day an eagle, a symbol of the god of thunder, would come and devour his liver. Then his liver would grow back, and the torture would be repeated every day. This version of the myth would influence poets, artists, and philosophers for millennia to come. Prometheus, the champion of mankind, creates the first humans from clay, steals fire and knowledge from the gods, and gives it to humanity. For this act of bringing civilization to mankind, he is punished by the father of the gods for all eternity. The rebel Prometheus, who defied the will of the gods to endow mankind with knowledge, provided considerable inspiration to romantic poets and writers. Goethe's treatment of Prometheus is one of the most famous. In his poem, Prometheus speaks in defiance of all the gods. Here, Prometheus symbolizes humanity in general, while the Lord of Olympus represents all theism, including the Christian God. Goethe makes it more explicit by directly quoting the Bible when Prometheus says, "And I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things." This sentiment is an ironic twist on the biblical verse. Prometheus is saying that belief in God is childish. As children, we look to the heavens in vain hope of finding someone to comfort us in our suffering. But as we grow up, we realize we are alone in the cosmos and put aside childish things. In Goethe's poem, Prometheus rises as a figure symbolizing the growth and awakening of humanity, throwing off the chains of thought and becoming the master of his own destiny. Of course, Goethe conveniently leaves out the part where Prometheus is punished by the thunder god and chained to a rock for all eternity. Another poet who did incorporate Prometheus's punishment is Lord Byron. Byron's version highlights the sacrifice that Prometheus made to help mankind, and how he suffers for his transgression. In Byron's poem, the immortal Titan Prometheus takes pity on the sufferings of mortal mankind. Out of pity he gives them fire and knowledge, and for this is punished. Chained to a rock and tortured, Byron writes, "Titan, to whose immortal eyes the sufferings of mortality, seen in their sad reality, were not as things that gods despise, what was thy pity's recompense? A silent suffering and intense, the rock, the vulture, and the chain." Prometheus bears his punishment with decorum and grace. He remains silent throughout his torture, so as not to give the god of thunder the satisfaction of hearing his screams. His silence becomes a form of superiority over Zeus, who fails to humiliate him. In punishing Prometheus, the tyrannical king of the gods teaches humanity a valuable lesson. Prometheus's defiant silence reveals his impenetrable spirit. Prometheus relieved humanity's suffering, raised us to the heights of the gods, and endured eternal torture. His crime was to be kind. to reduce human misery and strengthen mankind with knowledge. Yet, in the endurance of his punishment and his unshakable spirit, we inherit a mighty lesson. Prometheus is compared to mankind. Like him, man is part divine, a troublesome torrent from a pure fountain. Just as Prometheus knew he would be punished, we too know our fate, that we will die. Yet like Prometheus, we must live our lives and find our purpose, our fire, our sacrifice, so that in the end we can say, it was worth it. We have looked at two angles of the Prometheus myth, Goethe's, emphasizing defiance, and Byron's, emphasizing sacrifice. But we must also remember that Prometheus was a criminal. His story is a creation myth about how humanity was created and became what it is. Powerless clay imbued with knowledge and civilization through Prometheus's theft against the gods' wishes. There is a clear parallel to the biblical story of Adam and Eve. In both myths, humans are formed from clay. In both, an entity, Prometheus or the serpent, challenges the divine and brings knowledge to humanity. And in both, there is punishment. However, in the Bible, God punishes Adam, Eve, and their descendants. In the Greek myth, Prometheus alone bears the punishment. In the Bible, the fall of man is a tale of fundamental brokenness. Humanity is born in sin. In contrast, the Greek version sees humanity as elevated by Prometheus. His crime brings not damnation but civilization. Art, poetry, knowledge, all that separates us from animals and brings us closer to gods. He transgressed the divine to lift humanity up. Prometheus becomes a figure of resistance against tyranny, aspiring to something greater. Nietzsche connects Prometheus to Adam and Eve in The Birth of Tragedy. These are sibling stories of defiance and suffering, each shaping their respective cultures. For Nietzsche, Prometheus is the primordial criminal who brings humanity culture at the price of eternal suffering. The vulture and the rock are our collective punishment for knowledge. Yet Prometheus gives us not just culture, but foresight. The story of Prometheus is about human suffering and awareness. Our reflective intelligence makes us capable of deeper suffering than animals. We know we will die. Schopenhauer noted that intelligence increases the capacity to suffer. Prometheus grants this intelligence, and its burden. He is an archetype of humanity, blessed with knowledge, cursed with suffering. This brings us to the eternal question, is life worth living? Despite immense suffering, Prometheus teaches that yes, it is. The myth justifies our suffering with the knowledge it brings. The blessing outweighs the curse. Nietzsche said, "To our greatest dignity lies in our significance as works of art. Only through the aesthetic can existence be justified." Prometheus shows us that everything human has the potential to lift us beyond the veil of tears. There is hope for something greater. We must stare into the abyss and resolve to pass through it. As Lord Byron wrote, we can achieve true victory by daring to defy and transform death into triumph. Like Prometheus, we must live courageously in a firm life, despite the suffering it entails.